Why do therapists hate life coaches? Okay, hate, that's kind of a strong word for the title of this video, but there is some animosity out there between therapists and life coaches, and I think there's some good reasons for that. I'll talk about 4 of those on this video and help you get to a place where you understand the differences a little better. Here's the first reason. Therapists often see life coaches as competition. Someone who's coming in to maybe steal up some of the action or the business that they get as therapists. Let me give you a little background of where I'm coming from to start with. I'm Dr. Paul Jenkins. I'm a professional psychologist who practices exclusively life coaching. Now, this isn't where I started. I was a traditional psychotherapist for about 15 years early in my career. I made a big shift over to positive psychology life coaching for a lot of reasons, but that gives me some unique perspective on both sides of this issue. You have to understand, therapists go through a lot of training. They typically go to school to get a master's degree or even a PhD in one of the professions that allows them to be a therapist, either social work or psychology. This is a lot of work. Life coaches can just decide to be life coaches. They don't have to go to school. They don't go through all of the rigmarole and jump through all of the hoops that a therapist has to jump through. This leads me to the second reason why there might be some animosity. Not only do therapists see life coaches as competition, but they also see them quite often as less qualified competition. This is because of the licensing and the credentialing that is required for the therapists that is not required for the life coaches. In my experience, a lot of therapists get into therapy because they really have a desire to help people. I think that that's true of coaches also. But going back to the therapists for a moment, there's an assumption in the world of therapy that we are working with vulnerable or at-risk populations. People who are experiencing mental health issues, for example, are considered to be a vulnerable population. Now, I'm putting that in air quotes because I don't think that that's necessarily true for everyone. But there's a presumption by most governments and regulating bodies that the people who are receiving this service need some kind of protection. And that's why they set up licensing requirements for therapists and regulations that have to be followed. It's to protect the consumer. At least at the time of the recording of this video, most jurisdictions don't have the same kinds of licensing and regulations and restrictions for coaches that they do for therapists. I think this causes a little bit of animosity with the therapists who have jumped through all of the hoops to meet all of those restrictions. Coming from my own experience, I can say that it feels restrictive. I guess that's why we call them restrictions. And as a therapist, sometimes looking at life coaches who do not experience those same restrictions causes a little bit of animosity. I'm guessing that's one of the reasons. There's 2 more big reasons that I've discovered since I switched over to life coaching that I'll share with you in just a minute. But before we go there, would you take a moment and click the subscribe button right here on the channel? If you're really interested in learning more about things like this, you'll want to be subscribed to this channel. Hit the subscribe button and then make sure you click on that notification bell. Now let's get to another reason, and this is something that I discovered after I made the switch. There's some jealousy. I've already talked about that a little bit because I think a lot of therapists are jealous that life coaches don't face the same kinds of restrictions, but I think they're also jealous because they see coaches making a better living than most therapists can. Just before I made the switch, I was a busy psychotherapist. I had a traditional psychotherapy practice. I was booked up for 5 months. You couldn't even get an appointment with me. I had a waiting list. That's how busy I was. And I had negative cash flow for 2 quarters in a row. Now, I don't know what kind of math you do, but in my world, that's not sustainable. I was going downhill fast, and I couldn't work anymore. I was already seeing my clients and patients from hour to hour, all day, every day. So what's the problem? Without getting into all the details about the business model that I was trying to implement back then, let's just say that it was extremely expensive for me to run my therapy practice. Think about it. Besides the overhead of a very nice office downtown where I met face to face with my clients day in and day out, I had a reception staff. I had a whole billing office that was working with the insurance companies. Now, if you're a therapist and you're working with insurance companies, you're gonna feel my pain here. There's a lot that's required to get the dollars in the door after you provide the service. Not to mention all of the authorizations that are required and the extensive paperwork that you have to do to get paid. When I finally did get paid, it was usually at an adjusted rate because of the insurance contracts. Third-party payers create some really interesting challenges for a lot of therapists. I was experiencing that, and it was costing me more to run my practice than I could bring in. When I switched over to coaching, I got to say goodbye to all of the insurance companies. I no longer give my clients a diagnosis. I work privately with my clients at the rate that we agree to. And in that model, it is so much easier to actually make a living and feed my family. I think there's a lot of therapists who see coaches making a good living and probably feeling a little jealous about that. And then I've realized one other reason that I want to share with you before we wrap up this video, and it has to do with impact. Remember when I said earlier that a lot of therapists get into the field because they truly want to help people? Of course they do. I think that's the same thing that draws a lot of coaches to the field. I have personally discovered that the impact that is available through effective positive psychology coaching is far more profound than the impact that I experienced when I was practicing traditional therapy. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But I also think there's a lot of therapists who see the coaches out there who are touching so many lives and changing the quality of life for people on the planet that they might feel a little envious about that as well. I know I did. As I've tried to wrap my head around that, I think it's because we can put our mental health, our psychological life, our relationships, everything that makes up our functioning onto a spectrum or a continuum. And clear over at the left end of that spectrum is the sick end. That's where we have diagnosis, pathology, treatment, all that fun stuff, where my early clinical therapy practice was housed. I'm really more passionate about the other end of this spectrum. And to understand that, if we go to the middle first, that's health, meaning not sick. You'd think health is the opposite of sick. I'm putting it in the middle. Like with your physical health, you could be sick in bed with a fever, throwing up. There comes a time you can get out of bed and you're not sick. But that doesn't mean you're truly fit, thriving, prospering. That's over here at the other end of the spectrum. And there's a lot of overlap in the middle. Everybody's got issues. Have you noticed? Yes. And there's an underserved population here in the middle that I think is well suited for those who really want to help people. Because those who are getting therapy are probably being served well by the therapists. There's this middle of the spectrum area where People may not think they need therapy, and so they don't sign up for those services, but they may not yet be truly converted over to coaching. You'll notice a lot of high-functioning people, very successful individuals, are engaging coaches. But these folks in the middle, where most of us are most of the time, what kind of services are available that can improve our lives? And that's where the impact happens. I think that's one of the things that therapists are noticing, that there's a lot of impact in this coaching world that maybe they could tap into. Are you interested in learning more about this? I'm going to start you off with a powerful model that I have developed that helps you to understand that spectrum that I talked about earlier and what positive psychology coaching is actually based on. You can get a visual copy of this model if you'll go to the URL on the screen right now, drpauljenkins.com/the model. I'll put it right in your inbox. Go grab it.